Let's switch gears a little bit. Canada as a launching pad. Lots of discussion out there about building from Canada and how hard it can be for founders. And trust me, being on the ground, I understand that. At the same time, I think there are inherent advantages to doing so. And the two folks up on this stage, right? Like Bridgit now serves massive players, Gilbane, if I'm saying that right, Skanska. Uplink is now serving thousands of SMBs. And you guys have both talked about starting here and starting humble, but now you guys are playing on a global stage. And so what I'm curious about is, are there unique resources, talent pools, institutions in Canada that have been a meaningful part of your journey? And Mallorie, maybe we'll start with you for this one.
Yeah, so there definitely have been. Next 36 is one. The Creative Destruction Lab we were a part of afterwards. But I think almost more than the programs, which certainly were critical in our early days in our founding story, is the tight-knit community that exists within Canada and how everyone is only a degree or two of separation away. And so in the US, if you want to access the CEO of some of the largest banks, for instance, or construction companies, that is not an easy thing to do. It is very difficult to get in front of those people. And within the first year of starting Bridgit, as two people in university with no experience, no credibility, we had meetings with the CEOs of the top construction companies in Canada. And I just don't think that happens in the US in the same way, just because it is so much bigger. And that's a huge potential advantage to Canadian companies, because you are getting not just the end user feedback in the early product research stages, but the actual executive level insight, industry leaders that can help give you perspective on where the industry is going at such an early stage. And I think that's something that is potentially underrated, but I think we have definitely put to use over the years, in addition to a lot of the programming that I'm sure many of you are aware of.
That's great. I think thinking about Canada as small can be an advantage. This is an amazing example of that. Maybe just a quick double click here. It's great to get that accessibility to the market and to get that quick feedback. Sometimes I find that founders will take that feedback that is readily accessible, by the way, in Canada, I'll just reiterate, and you can get it. And I think Bridgit and many companies are great examples of that. But sometimes there's a bit of a trap inherent in that if you're trying to build for a global scale. Can you talk a little bit about whether or not you guys encountered some of that?
Absolutely. So I think there's been really two phases to Bridgit. There's been phase 1.0, which was our first product. That was from 2013 to 2019. And then we actually completely pivoted the business in 2019. It essentially is a different company. It's just we're still in the construction market. So we relaunched a different product. And with the first product, I think just given our age, our experience level, we were entirely focused on the Canadian market, to the point that we built a solution that was very well suited to the residential market and the different government warranties that happen in the residential construction market. And as we went to the US, it was a fit for a couple regions, but really not that compelling to the US market. And so we spent so long in the Canadian market that I think it actually prevented us from being successful when it came to global expansion. A lot of changes would have had to have been made to the product to be successful, which then, of course, limited our market opportunity, which limited the ability to fund the business and be like a true venture-backable company. If we look at the current product we have, we essentially were global on day one. We were not focused at all on the Canadian market. Yes, we've did some product research within the market, but if we weren't going to be a success in the US, it wasn't really an opportunity worth us going after. And because workforce planning is that much more valuable at scale, so it's the largest companies we need to go after, they are global our customers are global. And so it was very obvious, I would say, from day one that not only do we have to build a solution that would be suitable for the US market, 10 times the size of the Canadian market, but the customers we were selling to were global, and therefore we would also have to be global if we wanted to win. And so it was a completely different mindset shift that we made for the second product, which I think has really increased our overall market opportunity and just the opportunity for the business overall. But we were very slow to do that on the first round, and I think that did hurt us. So I think, take advantage of the fact that you can connect. I mean, maybe I shouldn't feel this way, but I basically think if there's anyone I want to meet with in Canada, I can make it happen. I'm like, I've met, the prime ministers like multiple times just because you're at different events. Like, I think that's a pretty incredible thing and unique thing about Canada. But it also means that you don't want to, get stuck here necessarily, and you do need to look at the bigger market opportunities elsewhere early.
That's great. I think what I take from that is kind of be intentional, right? Use this market to your advantage, but understand why you're doing it and don't lose sight of the big picture.